Natalie is recognized as a pioneer in the emerging science of metabolic medicine and frequently serves as principal investigator for clinical trials in the area. Her lovely husband, Stephen, is a biochemist, former university instructor in clinical nutrition. Stephen served on the faculty of the American College of Sports Medicine, advised members of the U.S. Olympic team. I went on a walk with him and he was telling me some very interesting stories, guys. And directed the nation's first federally licensed clinical laboratory for nutrition and immunology. Best-selling author, more than 1 million copies printed. Stephen has, so I'm gonna stop reading because I'm gonna tell you from my experience. We went to dinner last night and he is phenomenal at telling stories and making it really interesting on things that are super nerdy and maybe like a little bit boring for us, but he makes them really interesting. So we're so excited to have him here. They are the advisory board for Zinzino for the Balance Oil that we are gonna talk about today. So hand it over.
So I'm going to start by reminding you that you're already doing genetics when you're working out here. And by that I mean you're already aware at some level that what you are doing here is duplicating what humans were designed for. And that for a very, very long time, life was very, very active. And then all of a sudden it became very inactive. But your genes are screaming when you're sitting on a couch, when you eat food and then you go take a nap, when you eat dinner and then you go and watch television, your genes are screaming at you, this is not what I had in mind. But you're different. You understand that when you come here, you are getting back in sync with your genes, which were designed for movement. Something else is we're going to talk about this morning is that your cells have a specific design for how they function. And we've been learning more and more about this in the last 3 decades. And we're here to basically distill all that science down to a pretty simple and straightforward issue, which is the cell membrane. Now you all saw a diagram of a cell back in Bio 101. And you had to memorize the different components of the cell so that on the test you said, well, that's the cell membrane, and this is the nucleus, and those are the mitochondria, and you passed the exam, and then you completely forgot about cells from that point on in your life. Well, I'm going to remind you of something, which is the cell membrane that you correctly identified is controlling all the activity of that cell. All the nutrients that are going to be used by that cell, all the waste material that's going to be eliminated by that cell, listen to this, all the thousands of chemical reactions that occur every second in every cell of your body, all that molecular traffic is controlled and directed by the cell membrane. And this all by itself took me years of just studying that one aspect of cellular physiology. Well, guess what? The composition of that cell membrane was designed when? The genetic composition of that cell membrane was designed in the same way that everything else was designed over a very long period of time. And that cell membrane, since it's made up of fats, means that that cell membrane is composed in a way, the composition of that is determined by the fats that you eat. Now, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we were eating certain kinds of fats. The kinds of fats that we consume today bear no resemblance at all to those fats that we are designed for, right? So that's a problem. How big of a problem is it? It's a huge problem because you're made up of 36 trillion cells, roughly, right? Now, and you're constantly turning over cells. In other words, we are all in a process of becoming. You get that. You come here because you understand we are all human beings in a process of becoming, right? And you want to become a stronger person. You want to become a more fit person. You want to become a healthier person because that's what life is about, right? Now, in order to do that, you have metrics, right? Your metrics are how many push-ups can you do, how much dead weight can you lift, How fast can you run a mile? You all have metrics, right? And CrossFit is known for being metric oriented, which is fabulous. We now have a metric, a simple test that you can take that will show you where you're at compared to what you were designed for, which is the composition of your cell membranes that controls everything. Originally, in the hunting and gathering diet, that resulted in a ratio of omega-6 fats to omega-3 fats that was about 1-to-1. Omega-3 fats coming mostly from fish and other marine proteins, right? So you had a 1-to-1 ratio. And then we started to actually basically raise meat so that all of a sudden the omega-6 ratio, the more meat we consumed, started to go up. And then we invented seed oils, all right? Ooh, ow, way omega-6. All the soy oil, all the canola oil, all the cottonseed oil, all of those oils just skyrocketed the omega-6, right? And so now we have a problem because this creates what? Number one, your cells don't work as well as they should. And number two, they produce inflammation. And inflammation, as you know, is your opponent. Your opponent, when you're competing, you have other people that are working to try to do better than you did, but your real opponent is inflammation, right? And you know that because you're doing stuff to reduce inflammation. You're looking at your diet and reducing inflammation, or there's something else that you can do other than taking ibuprofen and indomethacin and indocin and all those anti-inflammatory drugs. I did a lot of work with athletes. Every time I was working with athletes, I'd say, show me what's in your gym bag. I want to see what you're using for inflammation. And they would usually show me an NSAID, all right, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Sometimes they had really powerful NSAIDs. Sometimes it was just over-the-counter stuff. But I would remind them, these drugs are not meant to be used chronically. You can read the fine print. It says you're supposed to take this drug for 3 weeks. How long have you been taking this drug? And they say, I've been taking it for 6 years. Right? So kidney damage, liver stress, all the things that you know about. Well, imagine if you can deal with inflammation where it starts, which is here at your cell membranes. That's where inflammation starts. So the idea to get this back down into balance, that doesn't have to be 1-to-1. I mean, that's a great goal if you want, but 3-to-1 is where you start to see incredible benefits. Well, what are those benefits? From my point of view, those benefits are a reduction in risk for cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, obesity, dementia, and cancer. That's my goal. Natalie has other goals as a clinician. She sees other goals in terms of her clients and her patients that she's got specifically for specific disorders. But it all comes down to, can you, at the very base, the very foundation of health, can you get back into balance? And wouldn't it be wonderful if A, you can, and 2, you can demonstrate that on an objective test that you can do at home with a finger stick? Right? In other words, there is now an opportunity for you to find out where you're at and then to correct that with a very special product like Natalie talked about. What's different about balance oil compared to fish oil?
Well, here, take fish oil. So I was taking purified fish oil with a high dose EPA of 900 milligrams a day and a DHA of 600 milligrams a day, plus supplementing polyphenols, flavonoids, and my first test result was not in the safe zone. The safe zone is an omega-6 to omega-3 of 3-to-1 or better, and mine was 6.7-to-1. So despite having a highly varied natural foods diet, despite having a chef who was a nutritional biochemist, I was not in the safe zone. I thought I was doing everything right, but here I was, a medical doctor, and I didn't know. And so testing is really important, and the product is really important. With purified fish oil, not only is it removing the PCBs, the mercury, the microplastics, but it's also removing the polyphenols that are found in fatty fish, which is why eating fatty fish that it's not so stiff that nutrients can't get in and waste can't get out. We talk about waste can't get out, we think about cellular constipation. But when we are in balance, when we're in the safe zone, that membrane is fluid enough that things work better. The receptors work better, the nutrients get in easier, the waste gets out easier. So I started taking the balance oil, and after just 2 months, I noticed Zumba got easier. I love Zumba. Exercise in disguise. And I had started it in May of 2023, and I noticed that there were things I just couldn't comprehend. And I told myself, well, you know, my instructor, she's 15 years younger than me. Her brain is capable of things that mine just isn't. Well, earlier this year, when I started the Zinzino products, with the balance oil, just 2 months of use every day, I noticed that now I could understand things that I couldn't understand before. I could understand the movements I was seeing, and I could reproduce those movements. And I know that my brain functioning better, that cognition carries through not just at Zumba class, but also in my work life and my personal life. When I did my second test, I was 1.7 to 1, and I'm so happy to be in balance. My new goal is to get to where my DNA wants me to be, 1 to 1, and I'm going to stay there because cells turn over at different rates, and we see changes in skin and gut first because they turn over the fastest. And yes, my skin got clearer, and now I can tolerate foods better. I have this long history of food sensitivities. So if I'm noticing changes in my brain already, how's it going to be in 3 years? So I'm really excited about that change. Here in America, we have a problem with our diet. Can anyone guess what the average first test result is in America for the balance test? 10 to 1. 10 to 1? Anyone else? It's 22.4 to 1. But the second balance test with people who take the balance products with those polyphenols that are the game changer, 90% of people are 4 to 1 or better. They're close to the safe zone or they're in the safe zone.
How long is that?
The second test is 120 days later. And we give it 120 days because that's the life cycle of a red blood cell. Yep. And the balance test, which is a gift to you today, it has a value of $170 a test. It does more than just tells you your omega-6 to your omega-3 ratio. It looks at 11 different fatty acids in the cell membrane, and it gives information about calculations, looking at your protective value. So for me, for example, my first test, I had low protection when it comes to thinking about what are my risks for stroke, heart attack, cardiovascular disease, other inflammatory conditions. But getting into the safe zone, now my protection is 100%. Mental strength was poor before, obviously better now, and I'm in the green zone. I'm going to keep it there. And then looking particularly at specifics of each one. And when we think about mental clarity particularly, it's the EPA and the DHA. DHA is what little babies are just pulling out of their mamas when they are forming in the uterus to build a brain and build a spinal cord and nerves, and we want to keep doing that and giving them the healthy DHA it wants. So today we're going to do some testing. Do any of you have any questions about any of this?
I do. When you're talking about the babies developing, is that when moms get brain fog?
Oh, yeah.
When you're pregnant, you call it pregnancy brain?
Sure,
You
yep.
just get like your head.
Yep. And then there can also be hormone imbalances too.
Yeah. So, and then this dry skin, like dry skin, the side effect of having the improper omega acids.
Yeah, in fact, I used to have clients when I had my clinic still. I would even just have put fish oil right on the area of concern. But we are hearing so many people talk about how eczema areas, psoriasis areas, these skin areas
over about 300 billion cells every day. You know, when I would tell that to my students, they would challenge that. They say, how is it possible that we're replacing 300 billion cells a day? And then I would have to show them exactly where those cells are coming from. The rapidly developing and turning over cells, skin, gut lining, the barrier between your gut and your bloodstream turning over rapidly, and critically important, which is why, as Natalie has reported with her patients, dramatic improvements in gut health when you've got the right balance of omega-6 and omega-3. Other barriers, the blood-brain barrier is improved. So now you're getting what's called leaky gut and leaky brain. So all those functions are improving as you're replacing cells, 300 billion at a time, with cells that are functioning at a higher efficiency.
Does your body shed plastics?
I'm sorry?
How does the body shed the plastics?
Yeah,
Is that
you
your
said it
question?
gets the microplastics out. I thought those were forever chemicals. So how does that help your body get rid of the plastics?
So,
Well, there's a couple of ways. One, once the cell, if a cell contains microplastics, once the cell is engulfed by the immune system, microplastics, since they're not recyclable, they literally go in the trash, known as the gastrointestinal tract.
but the body will store them in fat too, and that's where cellulite comes from. And years ago, I used to do consultations regarding mesotherapy and cellulite treatments. And I had a client, and she called me the next week after our consultation. She said, "Remember how you told me to stop eating plastic?" Well, it turned out that her husband had been boiling the plastic baby bottles to sterilize them, and then for the sake of the environment, he would pour the water off and make her tea out of it.
Yikes. Get a question?
Yeah, you guys mentioned something about dementia. So how, my dad is suffering dementia, and I just had to take African, it's a family trait. So how would this help? Does it help fight it? Does it help
Well,
offset
dementia
it?
can have a lot of different underlying causes, but we don't want to forget it all comes down to the health of the cell and what is his omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. We want it to be 3 to 1 or better to give him the best tools that his body can use for making his neurons healthy, right? We need a good amount of omega-3s, especially the DHA, not only for the nerve cell membrane, but for repair of the cell membrane, for the myelination of the nerves, which is that fatty sheath that goes around to help make the signals go faster. We need that EPA for calming down the inflammation, to bring in resolvins to end inflammation. A lot of dementia is related to inflammation.
A lot of work has been done with brain health and omega-3s. I mean, hundreds of studies. The blood-brain barrier, number one, but also the functioning of the brain requires high levels of omega-3, especially DHA. When we talk about omega-3s, we're talking about EPA primarily, and DHA, DPA. Those three are the primary ones that we're working with here. And DHA is critically important for the functioning of the brain. In fact, studies done with neuropsychiatric patients as well as people with dementia show what? Low levels of DHA. So you look at that, you go, so if you're a medical researcher, you go, hey, look at this. In these 4 studies that have been done, human studies showing that people with neuropsychiatric disorders and dementia have very low levels of DHA. Hey, clinician, shouldn't we be supplementing with DHA? And the clinician says, I don't think so. That's a natural product, and we don't do natural products. Come to me with a drug that will repair that, and I'll prescribe it. But no, clinicians, the problem stops from the research, and it's trying to get to the clinical level so that people will benefit, and there's a roadblock there called Big Pharma. I'm not a conspiracy nut, but there's a reason why that roadblock is there, and that you don't get tested every single year for your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. They have the ability to test that. It's called Omega Check, but it requires a needle in your arm and a trip to your doctor, whereas this is more accurate. accurate, easy to use,
More
less
information.
expensive, and you get more information.
And it's a dried blood spot test, and it's run by Vitesse Analytical Services, which is an entirely separate company from Zinzino. Zinzino has been around for 20 years, Vitesse Analytical Services has been around for 30 years. And because they've already performed over 1.5 million balance tests, they can also do crowd science. So they can see trends in the data that clearly smaller data pools can't. So for one of the things in crowd science that they've detected is some myth busting. People believe, people that are closer to the equator have better vitamin D levels, right? But with their vitamin D testing, they busted that myth and they found that people in the Scandinavian countries are better supplemented than the people in Africa. Imagine that. Anyways, great questions. Any other questions?
Hold on one second. I know some of us need to go.
Oh, sorry.
We're gonna hang out. We're here to talk to them, but I feel like I want to move to testing so that I know we're getting cold and we need to get rocking and rolling. I know there's good football on. But just to give my own little plug, you guys know me really well. I took the test. I was 30 to 1, and I
What?
eat really healthy. I know, like holy shit, how was I surprised? So I'm 1 month away from retesting for my 120 days, so I can't wait to share the results with you. But I can already tell the difference, right? I'm lifting heavier than I ever have. I mean, I always run slow, so we're not going to talk about that. But it's going really well. I have Trisha on it, right? We're trying to get pregnant, so like doing those types of things to help that type of stuff. And I'm with you. Like my dad passed away from dementia, and it's scary. And it's like, holy shit, if this is gonna help me to be better, like this is what I want to do. Give it to me. So if you're gonna take the test, we've got stacks. Grab one. We're gonna do it as a group, and we're gonna work through each step together. It's not hard to do. So once you get it, open it up, and you can take. Is that good? You can take the pamphlet and the thing to the side. If you need help picking yourself, we can help you. I'm here to be a prick, okay? I'm gonna do you, so you come on over here. Oh yeah, wash your hands, come on back. Yeah.